Now, unhealthy diet is one of the major key factors for non-communicable diseases. These are chronic diseases that are not caused by any infectious agents. We are talking about cardiovascular diseases, diabetes, cancer, and other conditions that are related to obesity. Now, cardiovascular, I beg your pardon, non-communicable diseases are a major, or they are the leading cause of death worldwide. This leading to about 63% of death annually. This translates to about 36 million people dying every year from non-communicable diseases, which are diseases that are directly caused by diet habits. So today on My Doctor Show, we talk about specific recommendations for dietary habits. These are vegetables in terms of carbohydrates, in terms of proteins. And today in studio, we have a very important guest, a nutritionist who will be taking us through that. And remember, you're always welcome to be part of this show by calling us in through the number that will be displayed right at the bottom of your screen. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268. On Twitter, we are at Ebru TV Kenya. The hashtag MyDoctor on Facebook, Ebru TV Kenya, or you can simply talk to me directly at Purity_Museo, and on Facebook, Purity Museo. So I request you to just sit back, relax, and learn from this exciting show ahead. Before we get started, let's have a look at what's coming up.
Brown nuts. Now if you want to stop me from brown nuts, I don't know.
Yogurt is healthy, more especially to women and girls, the reproductive part, yeah.
I don't like snacks so much, especially the sugary ones, because of my teeth problems. I'm sure I don't like snacks so much.
Doctor Show, and my name is Purity Museo. Today we are talking about nutrition, or some of the specific recommendations for a healthy diet. And in studio we have Cynthia Atieno. She is a nutritionist, and she will be taking step by step on what is or specific recommendations for diet. Remember to talk to us. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268, and the number to call us live through is 0791 478 990. Help me welcome our guest today, Atieno. Welcome to My Doctor Show.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming.
Thank you.
Yes, today we are talking about diet, which is responsible, or unhealthy diet, which is responsible for so many illnesses that are not caused by any infectious agents. We're talking about chronic diseases. But first, when you talk about healthy diet, are we talking about nutrition? Just to make it clear for our viewers.
Yes, a healthy diet normally is a diet that is most of the time balanced. Mm-hmm. And when I say balanced food, I mean that all the components of the foods has to be there. Right. There must be a carbohydrate, okay, a very important nutrient in the system, mm-hmm, that one has to take for the energy. Mm-hmm. This is the specific nutrient that you need for your energy. We are talking about proteins. Mm-hmm. It can be an animal protein, right, it can be a plant protein, depending with what you want. And this is not to say that animal proteins are bad. They are good, but how much amount are you supposed to be taking? It depends.
Right.
There are some vegetables. There are vegetables that we need in our plate, more especially when you're taking a main plate. Vegetables can come in different form. Mm-hmm. There are non-starchy vegetables, okay, and there are vegetables that are starchy vegetables that, mm-hmm, are not leafy.
Right. And just before we get to different kinds for nutrition, do we have, when I talk about healthy diet, I was asking, is it the same thing to when you talk about nutrition, or there is a difference, so that our viewers may understand when we talk about nutrition and healthy diet, is it one and the same thing?
Nutrition, more especially, it is a process whereby it involves food. So it roughly means nourishment of the system. Okay. So it starts from the preparation of food until when the food gets into your system. Okay. So the type of food you eat will roughly know, we will get to know if you're eating a healthy food or it's not a healthy food.
Okay.
Yes.
And just before we get now to the different kinds for nutrition, maybe to make us understand, we have so many conditions, the chronic conditions that are linked to unhealthy diet. What are some of them?
Some of the conditions that are linked to unhealthy diet are, first of all, being overweight or obese. There's cardiovascular diseases. There's diabetes. There's also some other diseases like arthritis. To name but a few, I can say those ones for now.
So why is it important? Why is healthy diet important to someone's life?
Healthy diet is important to someone's life because it protects you from these kind of non-communicable diseases.
Right.
Or rather, it makes you not have them. There are those people who have chances of getting non-communicable diseases, not because of diet, maybe because of another factor. But if you take care of the diet very well, it makes you not get the non-communicable diseases. And it also makes you to, as much as possible, to have a normal weight as per your height.
Right.
Yes.
And now, which foods constitutes a balanced diet?
So a balanced diet, as I said, it's a food that contains carbohydrate, it contains a protein and a vegetable with a fruit. Water is also a nutrient, so we must not forget about water. And also a little bit of fat here and there. We are not saying fat is bad, but it depends with how much quantity you're taking. Yes.
And we'll be getting to the quantity. And you said a balanced diet constitutes of all that. But sometimes before we get to specific carbohydrates, proteins, and all that, maybe what sorts of combinations does one ought to have in a day, or maybe, yes, in a day, or in let's say for breakfast, for lunch? Before we get to breakfast, lunch, and supper, maybe is it possible to have all of them, proteins, carbohydrates, legumes, at the same time, in the same plate?
It is possible, depending with the amount of kilocalories you're supposed to be getting in a day. First of all, an individual has to know the amount of calories that they get in a day. Then from this calorie, you divide them according to the number of meals that you're going to have. If you're the kind of person who eats maybe 4 meals or 5 meals in a day, you have to spread them through so that you get to know how much quantity of carbohydrate you will eat during breakfast, lunch, and dinner. How much proteins are you going to eat? So it is possible for you to take different types of food at the same time, especially if it is a main meal. And when we talk about main meal, I'm talking about breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Yes.
And we have, you've talked about main. Do we have sub meals or
yes,
something?
we have the meals that we take in between the main meals that we call a snack meal, or rather a healthy snack. So when I talk about a snack, I don't mean things like maybe fries or crisps or popcorns. It is a healthy snack. A fruit can be a healthy snack that you take in between the meals. Yes.
And Doc, let's begin with the breakfast now.
Yes.
What should be a daily breakfast for a normal person be like? What should it be like?
So a daily breakfast, most of the time we say that breakfast is a very important meal of the day. So it means that your breakfast has to contain all these types of meals in a day. Most of the time, especially in Kenya, sorry to say so, we are used to taking tea and bread and that's it.
Right.
So when you just take tea and bread, and also depending on the amount of milk you're taking in this tea, it might be too much, it might be too little. So at the end of the day, you're only taking carbohydrates. Sometimes there are those people who add sugar, so you're only taking carbohydrates, a sugar, and maybe water, or a little amount of milk. So at the end of the day, this is a main meal that we have said that it has to have different types of food.
Tea and bread is not okay?
I'm not saying tea and bread is not okay, but there are some things that we need to add to it.
All right.
So first of all, you have to identify the cereal. We say that carbohydrate is a very important meal. So a cereal, it can be oats, it can be Weetabix, it can be bread, it can be sweet potato, it can be arrowroots, depending with whatever that you have at that time. It can also be ugali.
Okay.
Yes, who said we can't take ugali in the morning?
All right.
So if you have decided to take ugali or rice or maybe something like githeri in the morning, you'll make sure that you have a vegetable and a protein. If you want to be energized in the morning,
Okay.
take a meal in the morning. Who said we can't take ugali in the morning?
All right.
Nobody. Yeah. So if you're the kind of person who wants to take tea and bread, yes, there's a cereal, bread. There's tea, but it depends with the amount of milk that is in that tea. You'll find others that are allergic to milk. We won't force them to take milk. We'll look for an alternative for a protein. So an alternative can be peanut butter. You spread on the bread. It can be one egg boiled or fried, depending with the amount of fat you need. So if
How
you
do
do
you
not
even know
need,
this is the amount of fat
yes,
that I need?
so the amount of fat you need, depending with the amount of kilocalories you need for the day. Out of that specific kilocalorie, let's say example, Purity needs 2,000 kilocalories in a day. So out of this 2,000 kilocalories in a day, 50 to 60% will come from the carbohydrates.
Okay.
Then 0.8 grams of your total kgs will come from the protein. Then the fat, you're supposed to be getting 20 to 25% of that total calories.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, when you do the calculation, you'll get to know how much amount of fat you need.
Okay.
So this fat, you're going to spread it throughout the day to get to know if I need maybe something like one teaspoon to fry this fat.
Okay.
Already I'm reducing the amount of fat that I'm going to take for the day.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, talk to us. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268. The call line is displayed right at the bottom of your screen. And before we continue and have a look at some of the harmful effects for too much fat, let's have a look at some snacks that you ought to take for if you decide or if you're thinking of losing some weight. Take a look. Welcome back to My Doctor Show. Today we're talking about specific recommendations for a healthy diet. And in studio we have, it's Atieno, right? Sorry,
Yes.
I'm confusing with someone else. It's Atieno, and she is a nutritionist taking us through some of the specific recommendations. Just in case you're joining us for the first time, we are talking about the ideal breakfast. Right?
Yes.
And Doc, you've talked about having everything. It's possible to just have everything in your, all you need, carbohydrates, proteins, and veggies in the same meal. But there are people who just take breakfast, like tea and bread for breakfast. Maybe do we expect any health complications for people who don't have the whole balanced diet in that breakfast, or main meal as you call it?
Not only are their health affected, but sometimes also the activity that they perform during the day.
Okay.
Because you'll find out that between morning and up to lunchtime, or between morning to afternoon, this is the time that you do a lot of work. And between lunchtime to dinner time, you do less work. So that time that you're doing a lot of work, you need a lot of energy, because at the end of the day, you get energy from the food. And if you're not getting enough food, it means that, first of all, you will be a bit lazy when you're working.
Okay.
You will be cranky because maybe your blood sugar is going too low because you did not nourish your system with enough food.
Okay.
So it affects generally the life of a person.
Okay.
Yes.
And there are people who just wake up and go to work without taking anything. It could be a heavy activity that they are doing, or maybe an office work. Maybe what are some, because majority of people don't take breakfast. Maybe is there any complications that come with that?
Most of the time when you do not take your breakfast, you find yourself snacking too much. You'll find that in your handbag, maybe you don't like sweets, you don't like juices or sodas, or a little bit of bites of some few things that you're doing. And then at the end of the day, when you go back home, it's during dinner time, that is the time you take too much food because you had not nourished your system with enough food for the day.
Right.
So when you go to sleep, this energy is not going to be used because you're going to sleep.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, the effect that it has is that you're adding too much weight without you knowing.
Okay.
You're affecting your system in that some of the hormones have to be involved in digesting this food as you're sleeping.
Okay.
During sleep times, there are some hormones that are in lower amounts. So when you're sleeping and you want to involve your system with digesting this too much food, at the end of the day, they are stored as fat. Yes.
Is there a specific time that one should or people should? Do we have a time duration for breakfast, maybe?
Depending with what time you wake up. So we usually say breakfast you're supposed to take at least 30 to 1 hour after waking up.
Okay.
Yes. So depending with at what time you wake up and at what time you sleep. Because you don't want to take breakfast almost during lunchtime. And in between, we are saying also you're supposed to be taking a snack. So if you're a normal person who works from 8 to 5, I'm saying just an example, the best time to take your breakfast is at 7:30 or 6:30, between 6:30 to 7:30. So that by 10 o'clock, at least you can take a bite of something.
Okay.
Yes.
So how do you balance between fat, proteins, carbohydrates? Because one of our viewers is asking, is it healthy to take a lot of fat than proteins? How do you know which one to maybe put in higher amounts and which one to reduce?
So as I said before, there's some percentage that we allocate for every meal. Like protein, we said roughly 0.8 grams per kg, which can be 12 to 15% of the total calories. You find out that the percentage of protein is less than the percentage of fat that we have. Protein is 12 to 15%, but fat is 20 to 25%. But the thing is, fat has a lot of calories compared to protein. So at the end of the day, you will take very small amount of fat, but it has a lot of calories. 1 gram of protein will give you 4 kilocalories, but 1 gram of fat will give you more than double, 9 kilocalories, which at the end of the day, you take too little fat, but you're adding too much kilocalories in the system. So you end up becoming overweight, or you increase your chances of getting cardiovascular diseases or diabetes because you're taking too much fat without knowing.
All right.
Yes.
And for someone who is watching from home, they do not know how to measure the grams. Actually, calories is a word that is really common, but many people do not understand. So when you talk about 1 gram of fat, 1 gram of proteins, in terms of spoons, because many use spoons at home, maybe how many should you use for sugar? When you're talking about tea, how many should you use for, is it peanut butter? Because you're saying it should be part of your breakfast.
So when it comes to grams of either the carbohydrates, protein or fat, it's a little bit complicated.
Right.
But to put it in an easier maybe version for someone to get to know, when you talk about a serving of a carbohydrate, most of the time we try measure it with the small cup, the 250 ml cup. So when you measure that 1 cup, it's like you're measuring 2 servings of a carbohydrate. 1 tablespoon of peanut butter is like 1 serving of protein.
Okay.
1 egg is like 1 serving of protein. So at the end of the day, when you compare peanut butter, 1 tablespoon, and 1 egg, you find out that 1 egg is a bit bigger than the peanut butter. But bear in mind that the peanut butter is a bit less because it also has a little bit of fat.
Okay.
Yes. If it is vegetable, still the same cup, you measure like 1 cup is 1 serving. So you have, first of all, you have to know the calories that you require for the day. It really needs for an individual to sit down with a nutritionist. They get to know the amount of calories that you require. For us to know the calories you require, first of all, we have to know your BMI, body mass index, whereby we compare your weight and height. Are they compatible?
Okay.
If they're a little bit on the higher side, we reduce the amount of calories that you require.
Right.
If they're normal, we give you the normal calories, depending with your weight.
Okay.
Yes, and then from there, now we will get to know this is the amount of protein that they're supposed to take, this is the amount of carbohydrate they're supposed to take, and fat, and fruits, and vegetables.
Okay.
Yeah, so after you've known that, that is when now you will simplify it and tell her or him, you're supposed to take 1 cup of sweet potato with maybe half a cup of vegetable with a boiled egg in the morning. So that is how it works.
Yes, Doc, and what's your recommendations or your ideal tips for an ideal breakfast? Remember, put in mind there are people from middle class and low class and high class, but we want to cover all of them. For example, for one who cannot afford peanut butter, what's an alternative for that? Maybe some few tips for breakfast?
Okay, so for breakfast, you can decide to have a cup of tea, maybe a cup of tea with bread and peanut butter and a fruit. That is the first option. Someone else will not be able to afford peanut butter,
right,
but currently we are in the season of avocado. So you can do maybe bread with avocado and tea. That's already a full meal. Somebody else will decide to take githeri in the morning. So you take a cup, just a cup of githeri with some vegetable and tea.
Okay.
There are those people who do not like tea in the morning, so they'll opt for cereals. So someone can take maybe a bowl of oats with the milk and a fruit. Yes.
And Austin from Moranga is asking, what sort of breakfast should a student take? You know, I think it's in terms of the kind of activities that you're involved in. There are people who are involved in heavy activities, but now this is a student who is sitting down maybe and learning and listening. So this is a person who is in a little bit, the body is not really active most of the time. So what kind of breakfast should you recommend for such a person?
And also maybe we are expecting something that is convenient for the student. Maybe it's a person who is staying in a hostel.
Right.
Yeah. So the best breakfast to have maybe in the morning, first of all, I'll still insist on food. If you're able to get food in the morning, take it. Okay. And because also when you're using your brain, you're using too much energy.
Right.
So at the end of the day, yes, you're seated, but you're using a lot of energy. Something else can be that a cup of tea with bread and maybe a fruit of your choice.
Okay.
Yes.
And let's hear from Cyrus. Is asking if is excess salt harmful? Because I usually find myself taking a lot.
Yes, excess salt is harmful. 3 things that we normally say you should use sparingly: salt, sugar, and fat.
Okay.
Salt, we use it very sparingly because when you take too much salt in the system, you're increasing your chances of becoming hypertensive or having hypertension or high blood pressure.
Okay.
Because it has a lot of sodium. And most of the time, especially when you're adding salt on the table, when you're adding salt on the table, you take too much without you realizing. And salt makes food sweeter.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, you'll prefer your food to be salty, but you're adding too much sodium in the system. When the sodium gets into the system, it has to balance with the potassium. So at the end of the day, the potassium is lower, the sodium is higher. So you're increasing the amount of fluid in your veins.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, if this happens repeatedly, you're increasing your chances of having heart problems.
Okay, and we want to take a very quick break. When we come back, we will be now looking at dinner, lunch and dinner. Right, we have in studio Cynthia Atieno, a nutritionist from Mpisha Hospital, who is taking us through some specific recommendations for a healthy diet. Talk to us. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268, and the call line is 0791 478 990. We take a very quick breather. We are coming back with more of this discussion. Welcome back to My Doctor Show, to the very last part of the show. In case you're joining us for the first time, we are talking about specific recommendations for a healthy diet. And in studio, we have a nutritionist from Mpisha Hospital. Her name is Cynthia Atieno, and she is taking us through that discussion. Remember, this is also the session that we will be looking at your SMSs and receiving your calls. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268, and the call line is 0791 478 990. I can see your questions coming in swiftly. We will be looking at them, but first let's have a look at our very segment on home remedies. Call us live for more of that. The number is 0791 478 990, and the SMS line is free of charge at 20268. Welcome back, Cynthia. We were still on the breakfast. So many questions coming in. But before we get to the questions, maybe I think it's important that you quickly take us through lunch and dinner.
So for lunch and dinner, these are the two other main meals that we are talking about. So there must be a carbohydrate of your choice, either rice or ugali or sweet potato or arrowroot, or sometimes githeri as beans and maize, and sometimes pastas once in a while, because they are processed carbohydrates. Most of the time we say take processed carbohydrates as little as possible.
Okay.
If you can be able not to do processed carbohydrates,
Which
the better.
are pasta?
Pasta, white rice, sifted ugali, and white bread.
So everything should be brown?
Not brown specifically, but we are
Right.
talking about the content.
Right.
So if you can get whole grain white bread, no problem. Brown rice, sometimes it's not the most edible carbohydrate on earth, but if you can be able to bear the taste, well and good. If you're not able to bear the taste, still do the white rice.
But in small amounts?
In small portion.
Okay.
Yes, and then for ugali, as much as possible, do it on your own. Don't do the sifted one. The sifted one has a lot of carbohydrates, and it requires you to take too much of it. And
What do you mean by sifted one?
The sifted one, the ones that are, normally we call them grade 1.
Okay.
Grade 1 maize meals. So if you can be able to go to the portion mill and do the maize on your own, if you can be able to bear the wimbi ugali, well and good.
All right.
Yes, because you will require small quantity, and at the end of the day, you're getting enough nutrients because there's nothing that has been removed from that grain.
Right.
And also at the end of the day, you're taking small quantity, which leads to less calories. Yes.
And Doc, how about for children? Because you're talking about this food I don't think young or children can take. Maybe what's a balanced diet for a child like?
A balanced diet for a child is more or less like an old person. But now for children, first of all, you have to know if the baby has any allergic reaction to any type of food. When you're starting to introduce food, more specifically, you won't start with any food. You will start with foods that are easy for the baby to digest. And most of the time, these are the cereal foods.
Okay.
So things like green banana, pumpkin or butternut, sweet potato, arrowroot, the cassava, they're easy for the baby to digest. So at the end of the day, you're still taking like the same amount or the same type of food that an adult is taking to the child, but now the portion is what matters.
Right.
So the child has to have a carbohydrate. There must be any protein of your choice after you have identified the allergic reaction. If the baby doesn't have any allergic reaction, well and good. They can take any protein at any time. If they have allergic reaction, you remove the things that the baby is allergic to and deal with things that the baby is not allergic to, and a vegetable. There must be a vegetable in the baby's food. At the end of the day, you do not want your baby to become obese. There research show that many children are now becoming obese at a very early age, simply because we put too much carbohydrates on their food, we put some protein on their food, and we forget giving them vegetables or a fruit.
Okay.
Yes.
And maybe how many times in a day? Because most of the children, when they cry, we tend to give them food. Each time they cry, we give them food. Maybe how many times in a day should a child be fed?
A child should be fed 5 to 6 times in a day on normal intervals. So the first meal, after the first meal, wait 2 to 3 hours, give him or her another meal. So at the end of the day, what you're normally doing is you give a heavy meal, and then in between give a lighter meal, a heavy meal, a lighter meal, like that. So in the morning, give the baby a heavy meal. A heavy meal can be a cup of porridge. A heavy meal can be food that has been either mashed or pureed. A heavy meal can be the baby cereal, depending with whatever cereal you want to give the baby. Then in between is something like maybe a glass of yogurt, depending with the age of the baby.
Okay.
Either a glass of yogurt or half a glass of yogurt, or a fruit juice
Okay.
or milk. Yes.
How about at night? Because when you wake up at night, they're crying. Should you just ignore them, or you can as well feed them?
If the baby is fed very well during the day, that is 5 to 6 meals in a day, they will not wake up at night because of food.
Really?
Babies sometimes wake up at night maybe because their diapers are wet.
Yeah.
So the mother thinks that the baby needs something to eat. So at the end of the day, the mother will either breastfeed or will give milk. When you give milk during the night, it means that you're giving the baby some calories that were not accounted for.
Okay.
Yes. So if you do very well, the baby is able to feed very well, the amount of food that you're giving, the type of food that you're giving, the frequency of food that you're giving the baby during the day is well taken care of.
Right.
The baby will not wake up at night for food.
Okay.
Not unless something else.
Okay, and what
Yes.
time durations are we talking about? Because some wake up really early, others wake up as late as 10 o'clock, others sleep early at 6 o'clock, others sleep at 10. So what specific, how do you measure the time duration for feeding these children?
Most of the time, the babies who wake up early sleep early. So if your baby is an early bird, it means that you have to start feeding like 15 to 30 minutes after they have woken up.
Okay.
Yes. So if you start early, it means that you will finish your foods early. And we have said 2 to 3 hours of feeding. So at the end of the day, they will still cover that same amount of meals in the day.
Right.
Yes.
And there's so many questions regarding reducing weight. What sort of food am I, what should my diet look like if I'm thinking of losing weight?
If you're thinking of losing weight, reduce the amount of carbohydrates that you take for the day. And this is not to say stop taking carbohydrates.
Okay.
It's reduce the amount of carbohydrates.
We're talking about
most
rice?
of the time, yeah. We are talking about rice, sweet potato, pastas, maize, bread also, cereals, things like oats and Weetabix. So these are the groups of carbohydrates. Yes. Most of the time, you will find out some diets restrict people from not taking carbohydrates at all.
Okay.
At the end of the day, when you do not take your carbohydrates, your protein will be used for energy.
Okay.
When your proteins are used for energy, you're restricting your body from functioning normally.
Okay.
Yes. So what you can do, the best thing is reduce it by 3/4.
Okay.
That is the first step.
So what
if
should you take alternatively?
Sorry?
What should you take? You're saying we reduce. Does it mean the portions, or does it mean
The
that
portions,
All
yeah.
right,
The
okay.
portion, the carbohydrates portion. So you reduce it first of all by 3/4. If you used to take something like 4 slices of bread, start taking 3.
Okay.
Give yourself like 1 week. The next week, take 2 until when you will be comfortable where you are. And this is not to say you reduce it to 1.
Okay.
Minimum 2 if
All
you're
right.
able to.
But you don't starve yourself.
Yes, don't starve yourself, because
Okay.
the moment you starve yourself, you're reducing the amount of hormones that are supposed to be digesting this food. When you increase your metabolism, it means that you're really increasing your chances of reducing weight. And for you to increase your metabolism, reduce the amount of carbohydrates you take. Take small, frequent meals. Don't skip a meal because
Okay.
you want to reduce
All
weight.
right.
At the end of the day, you're reducing your metabolism.
All right, talk to us. The SMS line is free of charge at 20268. Remember, Cynthia is telling me that reducing weight is not about starvation. The call line is 0791478990. Before we continue, we want to have a look at, someone was asking, actually, is it okay to skip meals?
No, it's not okay to skip meals. I'd prefer you take maybe 2 types of food, maybe a protein and a vegetable at a particular 1 meal only, not for the whole day. But when you skip your meal, you're reducing the amount of metabolism in the system. That is the first thing. The second thing, you're making your body get used to where it is. So you will not really lose weight by skipping a meal.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, and we have, hi, I'm Selina, my husband hutoka kwa nyumba 5 a.m. to 6 p.m. Husema kuwa hushindwa have anything very early in the morning. Ale nini sasa?
So what he can do, pack for him food.
Okay.
Yes, pack for him breakfast. Let him go with the breakfast in the office or at place of work.
Okay.
Before he starts his work, let him feed before starting the work. So
Okay.
that way he will have taken his breakfast before starting our work.
All right, and we have, my name is Austin from Moranga. My question is, what diet should a person whose mind capacity is low should have?
When
Maybe
they say
this-
mind capacity, what do they
Maybe
mean?
this is a person, because earlier on you talked about someone who's in class and they are really straining their minds. Maybe this is someone who's not doing really lots of mind-related work like thinking and all that. Maybe they don't want to increase their weight. So what sorts of food? I think you talked about that, but you can respond to
Yes,
Austin.
reduce the amount of carbohydrates you take, reduce the amount of fat, and then take small frequent meals. Take a lot of vegetable and enough fruits.
Okay.
Yes.
And hello, I'm Kimberly and I'm really trying to cut weight, but I'm not making any move. I have tried lemon water, but no efforts. I have also tried avoiding carbohydrates and wheat-based food related, but nothing is happening. Please advise.
Most of the time, patient is the key. You have to be patient. You have to sacrifice a lot of things.
Okay.
Example, as she's saying that she has stopped taking wheat product, not specifically removing carbohydrates as we have talked about it earlier. This weight, when it came up, you didn't take one day to gain the weight. Let's just be open.
Right.
Yeah. You took some time for this weight to come up. So you also need time for it to reduce. Do your diet very well, small frequent meals, avoid fat, avoid too much carbohydrate, and most of all, you must do a physical exercise and give yourself time. Yeah.
Okay, and someone is asking what I almost asked you. Hey there, what should pregnant women take?
Pregnant women should take a balanced meal, and most of the time we say that we add 500 kilocalories from the normal meal that they were supposed to be taking.
Okay.
So a pregnant woman especially should take all the types of meal, but in moderation.
Okay.
Because this is whereby you will determine also the nutrition of this child. So you do not want to compromise on a pregnant woman dieting or something like that. Maybe they do not want to have stretch marks, they don't want to be overweight, but at the end of the day, this thing has to come up because of the hormonal changes that are happening in the system. Yes.
Right, just go ahead.
A pregnant woman should have 5 to 6 meals in a day. So your breakfast, your 10 o'clock snack, your lunch, your 4 o'clock snack, and dinner. Depending with at what time you take your dinner and at what time you sleep, you might take another optional snack before you sleep.
Right.
30 minutes before you sleep. Yes.
Doc, take us through the snacks. Or people tend to take lots of snacks for breakfast, lunch, and for supper. But you've mentioned about taking snacks in between your meals. Maybe what are healthy snacks like?
So we have different options of healthy snacks. First of all, someone can decide to take only a fruit for a snack. So any type of fruit that you desire to take, that can be one type of snack. A snack can be a cup of porridge. A snack can be a glass of milk or plain yogurt specifically. A snack can be roasted peanuts, handful of roasted peanut. Sometimes you can decide to take tea and bread, but now the slices of bread is what matters because this is not a main meal. So maximum of 2 slices of bread at snack time.
Okay.
Yes.
So because most of the people, when you talk about snacks, they're thinking of things to do with fries, things to do with crisps and all that. Maybe hand in hand with that, you can take us through some bad eating habits.
The bad eating habits. When we say bad eating habits, sometimes it's relative because what is bad to you might not be what is bad to me.
Okay.
But normally, most of the time, when you take too much of junk foods, too much, once in a while you can treat yourself.
What do you mean by once in a while?
Once in a while is something that is not regular in your system.
Okay.
Once in a while can be once in a month. It can be 2 times maybe in a month. Other people do it once in a week, but when you do it once in a week, that is not once in a while. most of the time, either 2 times in a month or once in a month or after 3 months. Yes.
And what are these kind of junk food that you
Yes.
would recommend? Maybe a list of them?
The ones that I will recommend for people to stop taking or
Yes.
reduce taking.
Yes.
A plate of fries, crisps, popcorns, especially when you're watching a movie, you will end up taking a huge pack of popcorns because you're concentrating on the movie. So most of the time when you're the kind of person who likes enjoying movie, take a glass of water or a bottle of water and be with it there.
Right.
Sometimes it's very difficult, but train yourself. Reduce the amount of fat that you take, especially the fried foods, and this mostly we are talking about fried animal proteins, fried chicken, fried beef, fried fish most of the time. So reduce the amount of fat that you're taking, reduce the amount of fat that you're taking, increase the amount of vegetables that you're taking, and then fruits, not take too much fruits, but take enough fruits for the day. You're not supposed to be exceeding 5 fruits in a day.
Okay.
So when you take a huge bowl of fruit salad, fruit has carbohydrates.
Right.
So at the end of the day, you're increasing the amount of calories that you're getting. So you also are supposed to be reducing the amount, limiting the amount of fruit that you're taking for the day.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, talk to us. The SMS line is free of charge, 20268. The call line is 0791478990. In case you're joining us for the very first time, today we're talking about specific recommendations for a healthy diet. And in studio we have Cynthia Atieno from Mpisha Hospital. And someone else is asking, hello, I'm Koech from Cabernet. If I want to add weight, what sorts of food should I take? This is someone who now wants to add weight.
To add weight.
Yes.
Okay, so when you want to add weight, it means that, first of all, we have to add the amount of total kilocalories that you're getting. So maybe we can add it with 5%, 10%, depending with the goal that we want to achieve. Then from there, now we will still take the 50 to 60% of carbohydrates. The fat will still remain the same, 20 to 25, and carbohydrates proteins, we will increase a little bit of it.
Okay, and
Yes.
someone else is asking, can I give a 10-month-old baby yogurt?
Yes, you can. Yes.
It's maybe from what age do we expect to begin feeding children?
Proteins
with different
are
foods?
normally the last meals that we give the babies. Okay. And fresh milk, the recommended time for you to start fresh milk is at 1 year, because fresh milk has a lot of proteins that the baby is not able to digest them easily. But yogurt is a fermented milk, and fermented food are a bit easier for someone to digest. So the recommended time for you to start yogurt with the baby is at 8 months.
Okay.
And this one we are talking about plain yogurt. You're not talking about the flavored yogurt, because also you do not want to introduce the baby to too much sugary foods.
Okay.
Yes.
How about a diet for someone who's already have these diet-related conditions like diabetes, obesity? How should it be like?
So depending with the specific condition that someone wants to cater for, let's say example, diabetes. So if it is diabetes, the general rule applies: avoid all the sugary foods. And when I say avoid, it means that totally forget those things in your diet.
Okay.
Taking a lot of vegetables that most of the time do not have a lot of fat, reducing the amount of carbohydrates, and stopping taking processed carbohydrates. So for them, they do not have an option of taking processed carbohydrates versus taking whole grain carbohydrates, then taking the enough proteins that they require.
Okay.
Yes.
And someone is asking, my stomach is too big. I've tried to lose weight, but no change. I've tried exercise, but nothing. Help me, please. Wanja from Kirinyaga.
When the stomach is big, or what did she say the stomach is?
Yeah, she's trying to lose weight. She's
weight.
tried exercise, as you had said, avoiding carbohydrates, but it's not working. Is it still a matter of patience?
So when it comes to the abdominal area, most of the time it needs a lot of patience.
And Doc, let me cut you very short. Let's hear what Elizabeth from Muranga is saying, then we'll come back to what Wanja is asking. Hello, Elizabeth.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Yeah.
Yes, talk to us.
Okay. Niko na mtoto ananyonyesha.
Yes.
I want.
Uh-huh. Oh, we've lost her. I'm sure she's going to call back. Okay, what Wanja is asking.
So for the abdomen, first of all, there must be some physical exercise that has to be concentrated on the abdomen.
Okay.
So either you can do it at home or you can enroll in a gym for you to be assisted on reducing that amount of fat. But remember, for your abdomen to reduce, it means that also the body has to reduce.
Okay.
So it takes time, and then avoid too much carbohydrates. Because at the end of the day, most of the time the fat place, most of the time it's covered with fat. The stomach is covered with fat.
Okay.
So when you take too much carbohydrates and it is not used in the system, it will be stored as fat.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes, and Elizabeth is asking, she's breastfeeding, because we've not talked about the mothers who are breastfeeding. What should the diet be like? She wants to lose weight. Maybe she gained during her pregnancy duration. Maybe what's your advice to her?
Breastfeeding mothers, we usually recommend starting to lose weight when the baby is 1 year.
Okay.
So if the baby is not yet 1 year, please continue eating enough. And I'm not saying you eat for 2. Most of the time people say, I'm eating for 2 because I'm breastfeeding.
Okay.
Remember, the second person is a small baby. And at the end of the day, you're giving him or her food in form of fluid.
Okay.
So take enough fluid and avoid too much carbohydrates still. Yes.
All right, and my director tells me that that's all the time we had for the show today. But it was nice having you, Cynthia, on our show today, talking about specific recommendations for healthy diet. Looking forward to having you again.
Thank you.
Yes, and that's all that we had for you today on My Doctor Show. Remember, this show continues tomorrow, talking about different things, same time, same place. My name is Purity Museo. Remember, you could always watch our previous episodes from our YouTube channel. Look for Ebru TV Kenya. Always look for My Doctor Show, or go to my YouTube channel, Purity Museo, and look for My Doctor Show. See you again tomorrow. God bless.